Welcome, everybody, to Mud Flood Was Armageddon. The mud flood was Armageddon. Don't let them tell you anything else unless they're willing to debate you in a fair and honest way. I am not clickbaiting. Uh, I'm not that guy. I wish I was because this is serious. I got to show the disclaimer. I'm going to be showing some videos piling on. It's going to be about treating your body as a temple and whatnot. Doing the whole what you got to do to please the Lord. Where's that? Here you go. I am someone trying to reform the Christian faith. Been called somebody trying to start a cult. I don't care. I'm a Bible believer. Why would anybody think I'm going to give medical advice that would say, don't go to a doctor? And then you go like, well, I listened to the guy that, is trying to change the way people think about the Bible to the golden ages past. The flat earth nation and the mud flood was Armageddon. Don't take medical advice from me. Don't take monetary advice, legal advice. Excuse me. Take advice on how to follow the Bible. That's what we got. Remnants of the free speech. What they say anyway. Hey, look at that, man. Fresh faces. You'll be meeting some of the best people in the world here tonight. Red Storm, I know you're not new. But let's look at these pictures I got. It's a good way to get the flavor. Did I get any new pictures? I must have. Anyway, we're going to be looking again at quantum physics. General relativity is incompatible, but they're the people that tell you what's food was safe for your children. Well, you are mostly children to me anyway. It's like I look at somebody 45 years old and I go, oh, to be young. That was 22 years ago for me. New picture. Check it out. Oh, we saw this, the ultraviolet rays. I know I got some. There's that scary picture. I'm going the wrong way. I got to be going the wrong way. See that one? Did we look at that? That is, this is their quantum physics. Lynette, the physics genius, she's changed her mind. I found a 5-year-old video. She was not questioning the quantum physics then. Here, look at that. That's that secret national monument. That's by the. Did we look at that this morning? I wanted to. They found it by accident, displayed it for a little while. Well, the long hidden, forgotten mini monument, the Washington Monument, unveiled for the first time, will be covered up again. What? So they didn't get too many pictures of it. Hides one of what I think is the most fascinating secrets of Washington, D.C., unveiled to the public for the first time Thursday. So this was 2017, 2018. It's 12 and a half feet tall, 44 times smaller. You can read that. Look at, they messed up the E. Do you think that they would have done that in the golden age on some of the other ones that we've seen? And look at first I thought this U was like, well, maybe they just make the U like that because these two kind of have it, but not all of them. Like, I don't know. But there it kind of stands out once you know it's there. That's us. That's a rush job. Hurry up. Let's decorate the Washington Monument. Hey, do you like that picture? I used it for we're going to look at this video. Magic numbers in the mysterious world of the math. Genuine mistakes in the scientific process account for only roughly 6% of all retractions in the last decades. It's talking about, well, this one scientist in particular faked decades about Alzheimer's, covered it up so people died. But you know what? Everybody was happy. So, well, 6% of how many? Well, this dude, well, let's see, in the past decade, there have been nearly 40,000 retractions. 6% of them were accidents. The rest, they were cheating. The guy they were talking about faked 13 published papers on Alzheimer's. That's just low, man. What kind of a dirty dog scientist does kind of stuff like that? The ones that would feed you these things. Remember, I showed that disclaimer so I could show these video nicotinoids, fleas, and sugar beets. Now, I appreciate you watching. Now, this man is a professor, the PhD. He's smart because he's got that English accent and he works at. But anyway, watch the way he gathers his thoughts and then pay attention.
That even though we'd banned the use of these chemicals on flowering crops, when we looked in the pollen and nectar of bumblebee nests and honeybee hives, they were still being exposed to neonicotinoids after the 2013 ban on their use on flowering crops. To understand how bees were still being poisoned, we need to look at the environmental fate of neonicotinoids when they're used as a seed dressing. So I explained that they dissolve in the soil moisture around the little seed, and then they're taken up by the seedling as it grows. And actually, only about 5% on average of the active ingredient of the insecticide is taken up by the crop. Most of it is going into the soil and the soil water, where they can last for years. They're quite persistent, these chemicals, so they can accumulate if a new treated crop is sown every year. And just as they're taken up by the roots of the crop, they can be taken up by any other plant with its roots in the same soil. So a follow-on crop will also be contaminated. And the hedgerow wildflowers, or wildflowers in the field margin next to a treated crop, if the soil's contaminated, the wildflowers will be contaminated. Even the trees growing in hedgerows will be contaminated. And also, it's become clear that the chemicals it dissolved in the soil water leach downhill into ditches, which drain into streams and rivers and lakes and the sea and so on. So there's aquatic pollution resulting from this as well. So in fact, the whole farmed environment.
I know. A lot of you have heard this before, that they're poisoning the ground, and now the bees are dying, the insects are dying. Everything is culminating in something that's not going to be as bad as the Armageddon was, because we're told that's the worst time ever. But something's brewing. Can't you smell the coffee? Is that an analogy, or is that a mixture of them? So you're here. Bear with us and we'll move on, but you need to get this.
Soils, the hedgerows, the streams, the ponds, all being contaminated with these potent neurotoxins. And bees continue to be exposed despite the ban on the use of these chemicals on flowering crops, because the wildflowers, the hedgerow plants growing in farmland, were also contaminated. And so my lab and others were busy studying this and presented the evidence, and thankfully the European Union were really good. They were on it, and in 2018 they introduced pretty much a blanket ban on all use of neonics, not just on flowering crops, but on non-flowering crops.
Okay, so this is 12 days ago. They did that, but the United States has not, because what is it? And they're like, I don't want to guess what a neonicotinoid is. I better get it out there. New class of insecticide, chemically, it's a neurotoxin. They selectively bind to the postsynaptic nicotinic receptors of insects, because I mean, everybody has to have nicotine. It's when they mess with it and add things to it, it just messes up your central nervous system, and it produces paralysis and death in the insects. And eventually, once it saturates the soil, after it's been 40 years, maybe 50, that they've been pouring this on to get that 5% efficacy. It's a class of a neuroactive insecticide. You think, well, that doesn't hurt me. Oh, take a look around, would you? I'm not a doctor, but do you think we're looking better, healthier, getting better? Use has been linked to adverse ecological effects, including risks to many non-target organisms. And I know it's time. I don't want you to be a tree hugger either. I want you to love your life. Love life. Why let the people that aren't so smart, that just love to eat the Snickers bars, what, that should just be a death sentence for them? European history and some neighboring countries restricted the use. United States have restricted nicotinoids out of concern for pollinators and bees. Since when? When did they do that? Minnesota. Minnesota cracks down on some. Okay. Several US states. Well, at least Minnesota can document it. But they're making a lot of money. These are big companies. Wow. Bayer. Wow. It's seed coatings. Sometimes they don't add the seed coatings, and it kills people. Let's see. Persistence and half-life. Mammals and insects have different compositions, of the receptor subunits and the structures of the receptors, because most nicotinoids bind much more strongly to insects' neurons. We're supposed to all be interconnected somehow. This curse, right? These thorns, persistent half-life, might take over 3.5 years for the compounds to degrade in the absence of sunlight. Bee collapse, pollinator decline. It's peaking right now when the weather is bankrupt the United States, and the other countries are gathering in countries around the world going, man, I'm glad that we're not living in the United States, but they're lost. Okay, now here's your vet, one of the smartest people in the world. No description has been added, but we saw her this morning, and in the last 5 years, she's working with Roger Penrose, and she's doubting quantum physics because she's had a child grow up, and she just realized that she can't give her the basic answers. I find it funny that, well, this is her fantasy world, and it's surrounded by, that's the Mad Hatter. Don't tell me it's not. They're in a cupcake world. A menagerie. I see a rabbit right there on the cup. Oh, is that where I wanted to be? At least I want to remember 2710. But I know I have this part for a reason.
The quantum world.
Like a light being on and off at the same time.
Exactly, or the cake being eaten or not eaten at the same time.
Okay, it's a very tough idea to get around.
Yes.
Wait, did that make any sense to you? What did she just yap about? It's like a cake being eaten and not eating at the same time. Let me break down that. You can't have your cake and eat it too. A lot of people get confused on that. I know I did when I was, learning. But it goes that if you eat your cake, it's gone. So you don't have it anymore. Yeah, you can. Well, I can eat my cake. Yeah, but then you won't have it anymore. You had it. They're talking about, they're going to go from having your cake and not having your cake to a cat being dead and alive at the same time as the basis of their faith in quantum math. Huh? Oops. I just ruined right where I had it set up.
Things were, uncertain and also against our common sense in quantum physics, then I thought like, oh wow, that sounds interesting. I want to know more about that.
The pivotal maths behind the quantum world was first laid out by Austrian physicist Erwin Schrödinger in 1926. His equations accurately describe the unusual behavior of subatomic particles.
See, his hair is all mathematical symbols and things. That's supposed to be clever on their part.
Okay, all right, tell you what then. Quantum physics, lesson 101. Where do we start? Give me a lesson.
Okay, I would say we have to start with superposition. So let's talk about electrons. So there's a very small particle, and they can be in two states. They have a state, the spin, and the spin can be pointing up or down. So if we were in the classical world, the spin could only be either up or down.
See, that's the classical world they're comparing to the Greeks. In our world, we've never seen this. We're trusting them. That dark matter, something they can't see, behaves this way. You'll get it. And they have to do the interview in a cupcake shop that glorifies the, well, you know all about the Lewis Carroll, Hodgson.
In the quantum world, the spin is in a superposition, which means it can be up and down at the same time.
Let me see if I understand this then. So superposition is where something is and isn't something at the same time.
Yes, we can think about some examples. So let's say that we have a cup and the cup is full of water, or that's one state. Another possible state is that the cup is empty. So if we were bringing the quantum ideas to the classical world, we would say that the state, one possible state of the cup would be to be empty and full at the same time.
Does anybody understand that? No. That's a faith they have, and it only gets worse.
Okay, which you never see in the world that we're living in. You never see a cup that's full and empty.
Yes, we don't.
But you see this a lot in the quantum world.
Yes, superpositions are an essential part of the quantum world.
It doesn't work without fake things.
Like a light being on and off at the same time.
Exactly, or the
like the light being on. Yeah, it's just getting worse. It gets
cake
worse.
being eaten or not eaten at the same time.
Okay, it's a very tough idea to get around.
Yes.
Given two possible outcomes, in the quantum world, we now have to allow for a third one, the combination of both outcomes. At the quantum scale, you can have your cake and eat it.
This is such a weird idea. How do we know it's real?
Well, because we've done many experiments to prove it that show exactly that
Name one.
behavior.
What does that experiment look like?
Well, if we put it, say, in terms of things we have here in the table, we could think about, let's say that I want this piece of sugar to come into my cup, but there's this pot in the middle. So then if the sugar is going to come from here to my cup, it could either go this way or that way in the classical world. But in a quantum experiment, it can take both routes at the same time, and I would be able to distinguish that it did that if I did a quantum experiment.
It's if they can't do that. It's not possible. They can't make sugar cubes go and then like, aha, it worked.
Weird.
Welcome to my world. So you go through this whole transition from first the ideas and the mathematics, and then up to showing it in the experiment.
What came out of Schrödinger's mass was a prediction of something even stranger that can sometimes be produced when particles interact in the quantum world.
These are the people that explain gravity using this theory. Without gravity and black holes and curved space-time, you wouldn't be able to have faith in what you're about to hear. A couple more minutes.
A phenomenon called entanglement.
All right, tell me about entanglement then.
Okay, so take two electrons. If the electrons are entangled, and I do something to one of the electrons, for example, change the direction of the spin, that will instantaneously affect the state of the other electron, even if they're separated long distances.
I might have used
How far away are they from
polarity.
Well, they can be a few centimeters, but now the latest experiments using satellites show entanglement across 1,200 kilometers.
What?
Yes.
You've got something over here, and something at 1,200 kilometers away. You do something to one, and the other one instantly knows what's happened.
Yes, you affect the state of the other one instantly.
Apparently, there is no causal link. The only thing we can say is that the two particles are synchronized.
Who'd like to see
How does
that
one know what the other
experiment?
one's doing?
Well, that we're still trying to
See,
understand.
they are selling a fantasy of Alice in Wonderland because there's no God in their world.
What mathematics tells us, and then we can show it in the experiment, but we're still struggling to understand what that means. And one of the reasons why we don't understand it like you're asking, is because we don't see it in our everyday life. So let's say it's not part of our experience and common sense, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. So,
Okay.
I don't want you to go crazy.
Kind of like, I would have liked to shown you the part about Schrodinger's cat where it can be dead or alive at the same time. It's in here somewhere, but it's more of the nonsense. You can study it. It's there. Now, let's see. These benchmarks. This goes back to the marking of that mini Washington Monument. I just thought I'd save this picture. 666. It's from Benchmark somewhere in France that, I couldn't. There's nothing. It's a real small. There's nothing to the town. I looked at it. But here's different benchmarks. And I don't see, I'm a surveyor, but all of ours were flat on the ground, and we put our theodolite and plumb bob right over, the mark. Now these are on the side of walls, so this would be another step. This is one that you would try to center your plumb bob, benchmarks, and there's the 666 one. So at certain times in our history, we have to reestablish the grade and get it done, right? This was such a good, timely video by Senior Jared Boosters today.
If we're looking at biblical terms, things were often described as not formed, but rather spoken into existence. God uses sound to create everything that we see written about in the Bible. Genesis 1, for example, is full of the phrase, "and God said." And most scholars determine that in this context, the plants and the life were not just created by the sound, but rather by using the specific sound, a specific frequency, to access Earth's potential. Even in the Bible, we see different frequencies, different vibrations being used to unlock different aspects of our universe. Many look at passages like Hebrews 11:3 and John 1:1, which detail that the universe was created from the Word of God, that He spoke the world into existence. Some esoteric circles examine the concept further and look at spelling, as in to cast spells, and the
What?
entire concept of language as the main source of power,
Those are the
which
bad
was used
guys,
to
I'm
shape
pretty
our
sure.
world. Look at gematria, related to the Bible.
Huh?
Still, others take
Look
it
at
more
that
literally
bell.
and believe that harmonics created the plane on which we live. Looking at string theory and modern concepts for the
Wait a minute. String theory?
understanding of reality, we're again presented with the concept that everything in existence is a form of vibration, a resonance, a specific and tightly knit set of variations that make us who we are. Bell metal,
I don't know if he understands string theory.
or bronze bell, is a metal alloy that has been used for at least 3,000 years and is known for its unique resonance and attractive, disarming sound, seemingly indicating the routine dismantling
Is that a xylophone of some sort?
of history, which we have often come across. We have a progression of bell metal history which doesn't really add up. It doesn't account for the discovery
He's
and
right about
enchantment
that.
made on this metal thousands of years ago, nor do we have even a defined understanding of
Listen
how
to
and why
this.
church bells developed in the way that they did. First, we are told bell metal, which is essentially the same recipe more or less throughout the world and throughout the last 3,000 years. We're told bell metal is made up of a roughly 4-to-1 ratio of copper to tin, or roughly 78% copper to 22% tin. We're told, miraculously, that bell metal was developed or founded independently by multiple kingdoms throughout history, with the exact place of origin being difficult to determine. The current narrative
Okay.
makes note that the
Yes, then I guess the answer is they do expect you to believe anything. This is fun. Look at all the bells.
Tartaria. Now, we have a current narrative understanding that bell metal and bell making derive directly from these.
Hey, look at that's the all-seeing eye. I wonder if it was always bad. I wonder what L749 means. The year 749 of is the L 1,000 for the Roman numeral? Because that would be a good time to fake it. Fake it.
Exact same landscapes, the former Tartaria. That brief yet important tidbit in this narrative becomes a point of contention as we continue through this narrative.
I would think the hard part is to get this top here, to support all the weight while it's swinging and chiming and doing all of that vibrating. What happened to these bells, man? What happened?
Regions also use bell metal to create ornate figurines, sculptures, and household goods for the wealthy and the elite. Bell metal was said to be coveted in those lands, as it could subdue even the most evil of spirits. Remarkably, to the Spanish and the Portuguese, however, was the fact that bell metal was not only being used for these bells and other goods, but was actually being used to construct large cannons and even hand cannons, known as lantaca. Essentially, when the Spanish and the Portuguese arrived, the people all
look at that
could this
blintaka.
history.
That's a handheld for a giant. I'm kidding you. Even Aga Bashan couldn't lift that thing. Look at this guy's going to take a nap inside a cast bronze tin cannon because these guys don't make bells, they make cannons.
Truly be a hiding of the Tartarian bell metal? Yes, we are told that bell metal was superior in Java. However, we're also told when one of the largest cities in Indonesia was captured by the Spanish, over 3,000 massive bell metal cannons were found lining the city, except every single cannon was tied, pointed vertically to a pole, and placed outside every major building in the city as a decoration rather than a weapon. The Spanish were bewildered by this. Additionally, when we dive into
I'm bewildered by it. Look at this. The double-headed eagle is everywhere. It was a worldwide thing. And then at the end of the Golden Age, it broke off, and I think there was a lesser Tartaria. And then the next thing you know, who Habsburgs. Now that looks like it could hold some weight. Now that's
bells in Europe became consistently known as Campania or Nola, both names from the eponymous city of this region. However, seemingly adding to our discussion of the first men, the Tartarians.
You see what I said? This is how you make something to hold a big bell where you don't have to worry about it. This thing here is going to crack, but the bell didn't. Armageddon. Whew, wow. Glad I missed it. This isn't puny, but you know, the way they have the 1,000
Over 5
excluded from the
million people.
Pass and stow. There's something up with this. And it kept cracking and we kept trying to fix it, but it never worked. But we still love it. Look at this junky piece of wood that they scrapped and saved and said, oh, now it's our Liberty Bell.
We'll call home. The capital of this region is Naples, the third largest urban area.
Yeah, right. That's not a retrofit. Por favor.
Area in the European Union. However, what really makes Campania stand out is the fact it is home to 10 of Italy's 58 World Heritage Sites, including Pompeii and Mount Vesuvius. The original inhabitants of Campania were said.
I didn't know I would be so into the bells, but I am.
Essentially, 2 brass bells are positioned underneath 2 dry piles or batteries, which are connected in a series, giving the bells opposite electric charges. Due to this, the clapper rings the bells alternately due to electrostatic forces. When the clapper
they were so smart.
Will not need charged again for hundreds if not thousands of years. What's remarkable? The exact makeup of the batteries is not known and will most likely never be known until the device stops working, which is unlikely to occur in our lifetimes. Many claim the Oxford electric bell is a form of perpetual motion machine.
Wow, the Oxford bell.
1825, meaning come January of 2025, this bell would have been ringing continuously for 200 years. I am going to wrap up the video there. Honestly,
crazy, man.
Prove things true or false. It's a lot harder to prove things true. It's a lot easier to prove them false. And the more things you prove false, the closer you get to what the truth might be. So.
Wow.
All it got was sunlight through the windows and distilled water. So there's no minerals in the water. It's not getting anything that it should be able to use to build and grow. And yet, as that tree lives and grows, it gets bigger and bigger, and it takes on more and more mass. And it weighed more at the end of the 7. I think it was a 7.
Yeah. So here's that small town there in France. It's a small communion. It had that one benchmark. So also, I remember I was like, it's a real small Wikipedia site. Well, it does mention it has a dolmen. That's not it. That's just a dolmen. It has a Roman villa. Who doesn't? A 1400s Bordeaux castle. But 1400 Bordeaux castle means it's like where they lived in the time of the Bible. It's the Bible time. There's so many of these communes. You can't really. Communes. Now, because they weren't nations, these were all the remnant cities that they have records for, but they weren't nations. They all just ran themselves. We're going to run ourselves. We don't need a nation. And some of them had good feudal lords and panels and bourgeois and peasants and, you know, chivalry. What? 3 hours ago.
China has made a major leap, but that is only to not even catch up, to come a little bit closer.
Inside this simple-looking white box is a powerful device that offers better connectivity for any digital or online business.
Can Huawei accomplish the unthinkable?
You know, the United States is probably not going to make it. Probably not going to make it. So there you go. There's the history part. We can't trust it. They're trying to kill it with the pesticides. Let's close with a little bit of Bible here. It just, you know what? I am so glad that I came on late hoping to attract some people from Australia, New Zealand, all you Tasmanians, that you know you might as well be the United States and England. You're going down too. The sad thing is like China's like your neighbor. They got to come get us, but that probably won't be that hard. I mean, it didn't seem that hard for them to get fentanyl on every street corner, did it? I mean, imagine the logistics if you just wanted to go and mail a postcard to everybody in your town. But they managed to get fentanyl, illegal methamphetamines, and the other cocaines on the street corners of every town. That's some logistics. And so we've got a population that's eating Snicker bars, playing Call of Duty. They're ready for that, but I don't know if they're ready for what's coming. We're going to end with the Bible. So it'd be good. Now, first off, who is Joanna? Woman mentioned in the Gospels, because there's no religion, and there is one true undefiled religion. It's called Christianity. That's what the Bible calls it, the pure undefiled religion. She's mentioned in the Gospel of Luke. She's there, witness to Jesus' resurrection. She's one of the many women that Jesus cast demons out of, and they came to love him. Now, we can't believe what the Roman Catholics say, but the Bible does mention her, and I just wanted to just read that one part here. No, is this the one? Oh, this is Prisca and Aquila. Well, let's see here. I'm going to just read the first part here. Now, even the first covenant, this is Hebrews chapter 9, verse 1, it continues, for worship and an earthly place of holiness, for a tent was prepared, the first section in which were the lampstand and the table and the bread of the presence. It is called the holy place. Behind the second curtain was a second section called the most holy place, having the golden altar of incense and the ark of the covenant covered on all sides with gold, in which was a golden urn holding the manna, and Aaron's staff that budded, and the tablets of the covenant. Above it were the cherubim of glory overshadowing the mercy seat. Of these things we cannot now speak in detail. This is how we read the Bible. Of those things, they admitted. We can't speak of, we don't know what was in the ark. It wasn't there for us. Now it talks about how they go in because they still had a temple. The first section is still standing. As long as it is still standing, verse 9 says, which is symbolic for the age that it was written in, for the present age. And that's how they were still dealing with this. But when Christ appeared as a high priest of the good things that have come, then a greater and more perfect tent, that not made with hands, that is not of this creation. Wow. He entered once for all into the holy places, not by means of the blood of goats and calves, but by means of his own blood, thus securing an eternal redemption. I need to get a drink of water. I feel like I'm over worried about, like, oh, my mouth is going to, my tongue is going to stick to the top of my mouth any second. Like that tree the Prince hacker Mike was talking about, I just guzzled some distilled water and I'm hoping for the best. With his own blood, not with the blood of goats and bulls. Therefore, he is the mediator of a new covenant. We're at verse 15, that's how it starts. It continues, so that those who are called may receive the promised eternal inheritance. I got a good feeling about some of you listening. Since a death has occurred that redeems them from the transgressions committed under the first covenant, for where a will is involved, the death of the one who made it must be established, for a will takes effect only at death, since it is not in force as long as the one who made it is alive. And it doesn't count if you go like, well, he was alive after he rose again. Oh, you're cheating and you know it. So we're going to skip down to verse 23. Thus, it was necessary for the copies of the heavenly things to be purified with these rites, but the heavenly things themselves with better sacrifices than these. For Christ has entered not into holy places made with hands, which are copies of the true things, but into heaven's itself, now appearing in the presence of God on our behalf. Nor was it to offer himself repeatedly. Remember, it was by his own offering his own blood. No, one time. As the high priest enters the holy places every year with blood not his own, for then he would have had to suffer repeatedly since the foundation of the world. But as it is, he has appeared once for all at the end of the ages to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. And as it is appointed for man to die once, and after that comes judgment. So Christ, having been offered once to bear the sins of many, will appear a second time, not to deal with sin, but to save those in that blessed first resurrection, those who among the people who we're writing to, and he's saying, if you're going to be eagerly waiting for him, that's good. That's exactly what you want. Here's how do you want you to live? Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely. That's Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. It continues, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured from sinners such hostility against himself, so that you may not grow weary or faint-hearted in your struggle against sin. You have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood, And have you forgotten the exhortation that addresses you as sons? My son, do not regard lightly the discipline of the Lord, nor be weary when reproved by him, for the Lord disciplines the one he loves and chastises every son whom he receives. It is for discipline that you have to endure. God is treating you as sons. For what son is there whom his father does not discipline? If you are left without discipline, in which all have participated, then you are illegitimate children and not my sons. Besides this, we have had earthly fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them. Well, back in the day, we did. Besides this, we have earthly fathers who disciplined us. Shall we not much more be subject to the Father of spirits and live? For they disciplined us for a short time as it seemed best to them, but he disciplines us for our good, that we may share in his holiness. Let's go back one chapter here in 15. Let's see. Now, if Christ is proclaimed as raised from the dead, how can some of you say that there is no resurrection of the dead? Or how can you say that he wasn't talking to those people then? Now, I have to admit, when I first came back over this, some of these things that was pulled up there was something that is strange to me about how come back then they were baptizing people for the dead. We don't know. And any type of speculation from another apocryphal Bible is not really going to explain things. So we covered a lot. Now, they are trying to kill you with the pesticides. They've killed the insects, your friends and everybody else. They're overweight and diabetes, and I'm not giving them a free pass, but it's not their fault. They were told it was okay to eat it by people they trusted. Now we've all have duty before God to show ourselves approved. And you have to do that. And there's not going to be an imminent rapture. The way this is working out, we have to go to 2046. The United States is going to get a comeuppance. It's going to get tough. You need to get your mind tough. You know what's coming. They don't. God has a reason, not because you've learned everything here, but your whole life has been preparing you for this. Now is not the time to shirk what God has prepared. It's a flat earth nation. Me and my friends are never going to tell you anything else. Why would we? We're trying to prove we have your best interest at heart. Amen. Hallelujah. Oh, aloha. Arrivederci. Ciao. Sayonara. Auf Wiedersehen. Nakame. That all means